The blood-red lemons. There was a village, hidden deep within the forest, that few dared to visit. The village was old, almost forgotten by time, surrounded by legends and whispered stories of strange happenings. No one knew why, but those who left the village never returned, and those who remained stayed quiet, eyes always darting to the forest, as if fearing something lurking within. But the villagers were most terrified of the ancient lemon tree. In the middle of the village square stood this tree, gnarled and twisted, its branches heavy with yellow lemons that no one touched. Some said the tree was cursed. Others believed it held the souls of those who disappeared. On certain nights, when the wind blew just right, you could hear the tree creak, like it was whispering to those brave or foolish enough to walk past. Lila, a young woman, arrived at the village one stormy evening. She was a traveler, searching for adventure, and had heard of the village's strange stories. Unlike the others, she didn't believe in curses or dark spirits. She was fearless, or so she thought. The night she arrived, the air was heavy and the sky darkened unnaturally fast. The villagers warned her about the blood moon. "Stay inside tonight," an old woman whispered, her voice shaking. "Do not go near the lemon tree. It's hungry tonight." Lila laughed it off. It's just a tree, she thought. How dangerous could a lemon tree be? As the blood moon rose, its deep crimson light casting long shadows over the village, Lila felt an odd pull toward the village square. The tree stood there, its branches moving in the wind, but there was something wrong about the way they swayed, like they were reaching out, almost alive. Against her better judgment, Lila walked closer. The lemons hanging from the branches were glowing a faint red, almost pulsing with light. She reached up, her fingers trembling with curiosity, and plucked one of the lemons. The moment her fingers touched the fruit, she felt a sharp, searing pain shoot through her hand, as if the tree itself had bitten her. Startled, she dropped the lemon, but as it hit the ground, it didn't roll like a normal fruit. Instead, it burst open, spilling thick, dark blood onto the cobblestone. Lila gasped, stepping back, her heart pounding in her chest. The blood began to spread unnaturally, moving toward her feet like it had a life of its own. She tried to back away, but the blood formed into twisted shapes, faces screaming silently, their mouths wide open in terror. Suddenly, a voice came from behind her. "You shouldn't have touched it." She spun around, but no one was there. The village square was empty, silent except for the wind, but the voice persisted, now all around her, coming from the shadows. "Why did you touch it?" Her breath quickened, fear gripping her. She ran back to the house she was staying in, slamming the door behind her. Her hand throbbed, still aching from the burn of the lemon. She looked down and saw that her palm was stained with a strange red mark, a shape like a twisted vine, curling around her wrist. It pulsed as if it had a heartbeat of its own. Lila's heart pounded in her chest. She paced the small room, trying to make sense of what had just happened. The lemon, the blood, the whispers. It had to be a trick, her mind playing games. She looked out of the window, but what she saw made her blood run cold. The lemon tree had moved. Its branches were no longer in the square. They were now pressing up against the window of her room, scratching at the glass like fingernails. The lemons hung there, swaying gently, glowing with a deep, dark red. And then, from the center of the largest lemon, an eye opened, staring straight at her. Panicked, she backed away from the window, her heart pounding in her ears. But the scratching grew louder, more insistent. The branches began to push harder against the window, cracking the glass. Suddenly, she heard a low, guttural growl from the hallway outside her door. She turned toward the sound, her hands trembling as she gripped a small kitchen knife she had found earlier. The door slowly creaked open, revealing nothing but darkness on the other side. But the growling continued, echoing from the shadows. Lila, the voice was different now, deeper, more sinister. It was coming closer. Lila stepped back, her mind racing. She needed to leave, to get out of this cursed village. But just as she turned to run, the door slammed shut with a deafening bang and the lights flickered. The shadows in the corners of the room began to shift and twist, forming long, slender figures that crept toward her, their hollow eyes staring through her soul. Desperate, she ran for the back door, but before she could reach it, she felt something cold wrap around her ankle. She looked down and screamed. A braid of hair, long and black, had slithered from under the bed and was now wrapping tightly around her leg, pulling her down. She slashed at it with the knife, but it only seemed to tighten, dragging her closer to the shadows. The whispers returned, louder now, more urgent. "Give it back! Give it back!" The room began to spin, her vision blurring as the air grew thick with the smell of decay. She could hear footsteps now, slow and deliberate, coming from behind her. She turned, her blood turning to ice. Standing in the doorway was a woman, but not a living one. Her skin was pale and stretched tightly over her bones, her eyes sunken and lifeless. She wore a long, tattered white dress, stained with blood. Her lips were cracked and dry, but when she spoke, her voice was full of rage. "You took my lemon." Lila tried to scream, but no sound came out. The woman stepped closer, her long hair dragging behind her, twisted into endless braids. In her hand, she held a knife, its blade dripping with something dark. Too dark to be just blood. "You took my life." Lila backed against the wall, her heart racing. The woman's eyes were fixed on her, unblinking, unfeeling. Slowly, she raised the knife. "You'll give it back." Before Lila could react, the lights went out, plunging the room into complete darkness. The only sound was the soft, rhythmic tapping of the knife against the floor, growing louder and louder as the woman moved closer and closer. Then, a chilling whisper echoed through the room, barely audible but clear enough to send shivers down Lila's spine. "Run!" But where would she run? The tree was alive. The house was filled with shadows and whispers, and now this ghostly figure was hunting her. There was nowhere to go, nowhere to hide. Lila stood frozen, her heart racing, her back pressed against a cold wall. The darkness around her felt alive, thick with fear and dread. The only sound was the slow, deliberate tapping of the knife in the woman's hand as she moved closer and closer. "Run!" the voice had whispered, but where could she go? Just as Lila took a step forward, her foot landed on something cold and wet. She looked down in the faint light from the window, and her blood ran cold. The floor was covered in blood, spreading out from the place where the woman stood, as if it was flowing directly from her ghostly figure. The woman's eyes, hollow and dead, locked onto Lila's. She raised her knife slowly, the metal glinting with a sickening red light as it dripped with more of that thick, dark liquid. "You took my lemon. You took my soul," the woman hissed, her voice a mix of rage and sorrow. "Now you must pay." Lila backed away, her breathing shallow. The room seemed to close in around her, the shadows stretching longer and longer, creeping up the walls like living things. Every corner of the room was filled with darkness, and within that darkness, figures began to emerge, twisted, deformed shapes with eyes that glowed faintly in the blackness. They were the souls of those who had vanished in the village, drawn to the lemon tree, forever trapped, and now they were coming for her. Lila grabbed the knife she had earlier, gripping it tightly in her trembling hands. But what could a knife do against ghosts? Against the curse that held the village? She turned toward the door, her only escape, but the moment she reached for the handle, the door swung open on its own, revealing a long, narrow hallway, one that hadn't been there before. It was lined with mirrors, each one cracked and covered in a thick layer of dust. But as Lila stepped closer, she saw her reflection in the nearest mirror, and the sight made her gasp. It wasn't her. The face staring back at her was someone else's. Her skin was pale, her eyes wide and hollow, and her mouth twisted into a silent scream. The figure in the mirror slowly raised a hand, pressing it against the glass, as if it was trying to escape from inside. "Help me," it mouthed, though no sound came. Lila turned away, her heart racing, but as she did, the other mirrors began to rattle and shake. Each one was filled with a different reflection. Faces of the lost, all trapped, all begging to be freed. Their hands pounded on the glass, their mouths opening in soundless screams, their eyes pleading for salvation. But there was no salvation here. The hallway began to twist and turn, the walls closing in as Lila moved forward, her breath coming in short, sharp gasps. The mirrors lined the walls, stretching into infinity, each one showing her a different nightmare, a different version of herself, distorted and broken. Suddenly, she heard footsteps behind her, slow, deliberate, each one echoing louder than the last. She didn't dare look back, but she knew who it was. The woman with the knife. The braids of hair began to snake along the floor again, reaching for her, wrapping around her legs, trying to pull her down. Lila broke into a run, the mirrors shattering as she passed, glass raining down around her. The hallway stretched on endless, with no doors, no windows, just more mirrors and more reflections, all screaming, all watching. But then, at the very end of the hallway, she saw it, a door, a way out. She sprinted toward it, her heart pounding in her chest. But just as she reached for the handle, something cold grabbed her wrist. She spun around, and there, standing behind her, was a woman, her dead eyes staring straight into Lila's soul. Her grip was like ice, freezing Lila's skin, and her face twisted into a cruel smile. "You can't leave," the woman whispered, her voice like nails on glass. "You belong to the tree now. Lila struggled, but the woman's grip tightened. The knife in her other hand gleamed in the faint light, the blade stained with the blood of countless souls. The braids of hair wrapped around Lila's ankles, pulling her down to the floor, dragging her back toward the shadows. But Lila wasn't ready to give up. With a sudden burst of strength, she slashed at the braids with her knife, cutting through the thick strands of hair. The woman screamed a high-pitched, ear-shattering sound that echoed through the hallway, shaking the very walls. The braids loosened their grip, and Lila broke free, stumbling toward the door. She threw it open and slammed it shut behind her, locking the horror behind her. Or so she thought. On the other side of the door was no safety, no escape. Instead, she found herself standing in the village square again, but something was different. The village was empty. The houses were crumbling, the streets overgrown with vines, and the air was thick with the stench of death. And there, in the center of the square, stood the lemon tree. But now, it was much larger, its branches twisted and blackened, reaching high into the sky. The lemons that hung from its branches were no longer yellow, but a deep blood red, each one pulsing like a beating heart. The ground beneath the tree was soaked with blood, and the air buzzed with the low hum of whispers. Lila stepped closer, drawn to the tree against her will. As she approached, she saw something moving among the branches, faces twisted and deformed, staring down at her from within the leaves. The souls of the lost, trapped forever within the cursed tree. Suddenly, the ground beneath her feet began to shake. The tree's roots burst from the earth, twisting and curling, reaching for her like skeletal hands. Lila tried to run, but the roots were too fast. They wrapped around her legs, pulling her toward the tree, toward its dark, hungry maw. She screamed, but no one was there to hear her. The whispers grew louder, filling her ears, her mind, her soul. The faces in the tree watched her with hollow eyes, their mouths opening in silent screams. The tree was alive, and it wanted her. The branches reached down, their gnarled fingers wrapping around her body, pulling her closer and closer to the trunk. She struggled, but it was no use. The tree was too strong. The bark split open, revealing a dark, pulsing core, and from within, the woman's voice echoed once more. "Give it back." Lila's heart pounded in her chest as the tree's branches pulled her closer to the gaping hole in its trunk. The whispers became deafening, a chorus of voices all demanding the same thing. "Give it back! Give it back!" Suddenly, the tree split open even wider, revealing a dark, empty void within. Lila screamed as the branches wrapped around her arms and legs, pulling her inside, dragging her into the darkness. And then